Hey, this is Brian Hyde. I apologize for the bad lighting, but I had to step out where it was quiet, where I could bring you a quick update on some of the observations of what was going on today in terms of the detention hearing for Cliven and Ammon and for Ryan Payne. Now, as you probably have already heard, Cliven was denied release for from pretrial detention. Not the news that, of course, his family was wanting to hear. In the case of Ryan Payne, the judge also denied release, saying that this was due to him taking a guilty plea pertaining to the case up in Malheur, Oregon. And then as far as Ammon's case, this is where they spent a lot of time discussing today. Ammon assuring the judge he would be willing to abide by whatever, the pretrial conditions were if he were to be released. And apparently the government wants to argue more, and so the judge has said, well, we'll continue that hearing on Monday. So that's where they are. It's it's hard to describe the sense of invincibility that the prosecutors bring into that courtroom with them. I know today there was kind of a terse exchange between one of Ammon's lawyers, Dan Hill, and Daniel Shies, who is one of the prosecutors. And Shies actually drew groans from the spectators there in the courtroom, which, if you remember, you're not supposed to show any kind of emotion. You're not supposed to give any verbal or nonverbal cues about how you feel about what is being said or what's being done. But members of the crowd audibly groaned when he started picking on Dan Hill and saying, well, I guess you're a young attorney and, you don't have a lot of experience here. And it's a glimpse into this sense of assuredness, this we can do no wrong, which just seems to permeate so much of the government's actions. So I come back to the idea, and we've asked this a couple of times in the course of covering this trial. Is this really about justice? And for that matter, let's at least try and have some semblance of what justice is. Is justice about what is fair being done? Meaning if there is something that was done that was wrong, if harm was caused, then the fair thing would be that some kind of recompense has to take place and someone must be held accountable. But that's not the feeling that one gets from watching the prosecution at work. The way they twist the defendant's words, the way that they just seek every little opportunity to take their digs and just make it sound like, these guys are not family men. Why, they were just, one step below a herd of escaped convicts riding through town, pillaging on the backs of grizzly bears. It's very interesting to see, and yet I think it kind of illustrates the disconnect between our government and the people. If they were really there to serve the interest of justice, you would think that there would be some regard for the humanity of the defendants and the situation that they are in. But there's this, it's like there's this supposition that, hey, your government, you can do no wrong. And of course, no expense is spared, no resource denied when it comes to them making their case. And yet, it just seems like there's a sense of self-assuredness. I think hubris is actually the better word. There's a kind of hubris at work there that just presumes that, hey, because we are who we are, we can do no wrong. And yet, you're seeing before your very eyes a family of good, God-fearing, freedom-loving people who were backed into a corner and forced to make a stand for their livelihood. And the fact that they stood up to those who are so self-assured that they can do no wrong, boy, they are going to be made examples of if the prosecution has its way. So I think there's a reason behind that, and I think the reason is the prosecution and the government understands courage is courageous, and not just with no regard for anybody or no regard for themselves, but the kind of courage that inspires people to be willing to do hard things, to risk being called names and being accused of things and have your name dragged through the dirt. for a larger purpose. And I think in this case, the larger purpose is freedom. And people who know the Bundys understand this. They understand that there's a lot of humility. There's a lot of sanctity to the stance that they have taken. And it's a good contrast, I guess, when we see what they're up against. So, not the news we were hoping to report today, but we will continue to bring you updates. We'll get them to you twice a day. Keep the Bundy family in your prayers, and pray that the hearts of the people who need to be softened will be softened.